Hi, I am Astrid Carlson, and I've been a freelance model now for almost 8 or 9 years. So almost a whole decade. Woo, I think. It's been quite the journey and quite the ride. So I'm remaking this video that I actually made for another model a few years ago. It's called What Do Models Think During Their Photo Shoot? And I came up with this idea because I've had a lot of photographers that were kind of insecure during a photo shoot. I kind of wanted to just make this in order to squash some of those feels, but also just as a nice form of entertainment to like learn a little bit about what's going on in their heads and their minds and how to get a better photo shoot out of the process. So I'm actually not going to just talk about what we're thinking about during a photo shoot, but I'm going to start with what we think about when we first look at your portfolio, what goes through our heads when you're booking with us, and then what we're thinking about during the photo shoot, of course. So without much further ado, let's get started. So portfolios are, of course, like a pretty big deal. It's not just portfolios, but it's also, of course, your social media, different ways that you're either trying to converse with me and find models. I know a lot of models and photographers meet each other through social media, everything from Facebook to Instagram to TikTok to whatever else. Some people, of course, will find you through your website and we'll have conversations there. And when it comes to portfolios, there's also this range of portfolios. So some people, of course, just have their portfolios on their social media accounts, and some people will have a website. Depending on who you are and what you're kind of trying to do with your own portfolio, I think that's a personal choice. I don't judge anyone by if they have a professional website or not. I don't think that's necessarily indicative of how the photo shoot's going to go or what the work is like. That usually just depends on what the photographer is trying to do with their work and who they're trying to communicate with, of course. Um, these days, so much is just on social media, and like Instagram, for instance, has pretty much taken over most of people's portfolios. So that's why I don't really make too much of a big deal out of it. It makes a lot of sense. It's more easily accessible, and honestly, it gives me a really good idea of your work without too much like shares and things like that you might have on your Facebook. Of course, this is different for everyone's social media. I've seen a lot of people who post like some of their portfolio on their Instagram, so it's good for me to get a actual portfolio or like list or some collection of your photos and work that you're working on and that you're trying to work towards. This is just because as a model, like when I see this work, I can use it to judge like what kind of look you're looking for, like what's your aesthetic, what's your style, like are we going to work well together? And then in this way, like I know what kind of wardrobe to bring, what to prepare, what kind of poses I'm going to be needing to do, because I'm going to pretty much tailor my posing towards whatever style of work you're going for. If you're going for something more glam, if you're going for something more dark, if you're going for something more ethereal or casual, like I like to know that ahead of time by looking through your portfolio. And so it's good too that when you send a portfolio, if you're looking for something outside of your normal work and you're trying to go towards something different, to have just a list of work that you've been inspired by. Either this can be a Pinterest board or a few names of photographers that you're really looking at, and then why you're looking in that direction. Like, are you looking to just completely upheave your style altogether? Like, are you looking for a total change? Are you trying to go for something that is a little more like fantasy? Are you trying to just like change your lighting a bit or your editing style? These are good things for me to know so that way you don't give me some sort of portfolio that's so different from what you already have and not really know if you want me to focus in any specific direction from this photographer. Some people, of course, I'm sure, are just trying to like completely change everything and go exactly for a different look, but that doesn't always mean that you can, especially not right away. So sometimes when I see that you're trying to change styles, I'll look at this new look and see how much it differs from your original style. In some cases, sometimes it's just more about the posing, it's more about the models that you're working with, more about changing things up a little bit or getting a little more creative or a little bit more daring or softer. Just trying to up it up a little bit more. And in some cases, it really looks like you look up to these people, but this might not necessarily be your style. But there might be ways to incorporate something that someone else does into the style of work that you're doing. So sometimes I see this with like someone has a portfolio of work, and let's say for instance it's all outdoor, very natural light, and they show me this like style that they're really interested in that's very like high key or flash, like can't be done without like some sort of artificial lighting. Or it can be, but it would be tricky. There might be some ways that we can work together to try to incorporate aspects of that style into this natural light kind of look, because it's not impossible. It's just sometimes it's a little tricky, it's a little different. And for a lot of photographers too, I've noticed with working with them that when they show me this idea that they're really interested in, they might really like it and they might be really interested in the idea, but they might not always be able to achieve it themselves. They're still kind of stuck in what they like and what's familiar. That makes a lot of sense. And some cases it's better just to do with what you enjoy and what you like, and stick to that style. And in some cases, when you're ready, and that is totally you as a photographer, it is time to go in that other direction. But either way, it tells me a lot about how you want me to pose in relationship to the lighting as well as the photographer, as much as character, and sometimes a little bit of a different style, and how we can blend and mesh those things together so you can like build towards a different direction. Sometimes just adding a small degree of something different is just enough to ramp it up or change your style a touch. Let's see. So looking at your portfolio, I think also when it comes to social media, this has become a much bigger thing, is all of your social media ends up being a representation of you. So especially if you're not just posting photos, you're also posting memes, you're posting family stuff. This in a way becomes your brand indirectly. I know like not every single photographer is looking to become a business. Not every single artist is looking to become a business, but it still tells me a little bit about how upfront you are with, I guess, your own opinions or with your own life. Like, how much is that going to come into the mix of working together? This isn't like that big of a deal sometimes, but every once in a while, if I see like a lot of propaganda in some direction or another, or a lot of like interesting opinions, that can really sway or direct me to understanding what you're trying to accomplish with your art or with your work. Just seeing who you are as a person and what you post. And I also have to keep this in mind for myself, because any photos that you potentially post to your social media could be right next to whatever opinions that you're also posting on social media. So this is something that's kind of important for me as a model to like look at for you as a photographer. I think this is also really important if you're a model watching this, to think about that when you're posting as well, that certain photographers might not always want their photos right next to your opinions on social media. So you have to figure out like how much you value, like how much you value being public about your own opinions or your own thoughts or your own personal life. This can also be that sometimes I don't necessarily like the idea of my art right next to like photos of my cats, because I just kind of feel like they're very different. I get that it's a whole picture about me, but I really don't want people to think about it as just being me usually in the photo. I really want people to enjoy the photo as a standalone object some of the time. And I know that's kind of hard and asking a lot, because there is a lot of like personalization in people who are taking in their own ideas and thoughts about me that they're then putting into the photo. But oftentimes I do try to reduce some of the personal life in there, because I'd much rather people focus on how they feel and what they're picking up from a photo than what they think about me from the photo. There's a lot more I could say on that, but I think that's really like the biggest deal. When I'm looking at your portfolio too, I also often look at not only like your aesthetic and your style, but also your skill level and your professionalism. Like a lot can be read from your portfolio, but especially like, I don't want to say skill, but sometimes more just what your eye is capturing and what your eye is going to be looking for and gravitating towards. Sometimes you might be looking for something that's more contrasty, and sometimes you might be looking for something that's a little more softer as far as lighting, as far as angles, etc. goes. I'm also looking at your portfolio to see, are you working with a lot of professional models, or have you worked with a lot of professional models or any professional models? The more I've modeled, the more I think it's obvious and easy to tell like how many models are like in someone's portfolio, because they have a very specific look and air and pose that they give to a photo of being very natural and used to being in front of the camera, versus when someone posts a lot more client work or a lot more work with trade models. Sometimes you can tell the comfort that they're having during the photo shoot. You can kind of tell the difference between someone who knows exactly what to do when the camera's on them versus someone who's a little bit more new, maybe comfortable, but isn't quite as familiar with what's going on with the process. And this is just something that I look at too, to know how I'm going to work with you, because sometimes if you haven't worked with a lot of professional models, you might not always know exactly the process of going about doing that or what to expect. And I can kind of bring that into the photo shoot to know how to help you. And also it tells me too, like, what is your audience? Like, who are you trying to like post these photos for? Is it yourself? So are you just having fun? And then we can just focus on like taking images that are like really important to you, or are we trying really hard to kind of focus on like a specific kind of clientele, portfolio, selling, commercial, etc.? These kinds of things can like cater to a different, or need a different kind of posing style and a different kind of posing look, as well as like what kind of attitude and what kind of personality do I need to be bringing to the shoot? How much do we need to be focusing on you getting a very specific shot versus you're out here just to like enjoy and get something really good, and maybe you're processing and working towards more inspiration and just kind of trying to find yourself. Let's see, the like next part that, sorry, I have my list here. It's my first YouTube. So, okay. It's my first YouTube that I'm making, I think, because I haven't checked my YouTube. Long story. But anyway, I made like a little list to remind myself to say all the things that I was supposed to say. So one of the other things that models are looking at in your portfolio is also the wording that's going with it. So the captions and hashtags and how you're crediting your models are a big deal. The reason for modeling credits isn't so much that like I need to be credited for the modeling work that I've done. Like, you paid for the shoot, you do whatever. And I understand that sometimes putting the model credit underneath might be a slight like weird deterrent for like client work, or not necessarily seem the most professional. I mean, I get it. There's like a lot of reasons, right? The main reason why I look for these credits is that if I see that you're trying to work with a lot of models and you're not crediting certain people, or you are crediting other people, that can be a little bit of a red flag. For me, it could either show that you're not paying enough attention to the models that you're working with to know when or where to credit them, what their credits are, or it could be that you've run into some bad relationships with those models, and so you're not crediting them, so that way people don't try to make too much of a link between them. I've definitely noticed this before, that a lot of times photographers will still want to use the image, but they won't credit the model in that shot because they've had such a bad relationship with that model, for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's not always the photographer's fault, but it definitely just raises a flag that means I want to check in on it. I also mentioned captions and hashtags. This is just because it gives me an idea of what the photographer thinks their work looks like, or how they want people to perceive their work. So if I see a lot of captions that are talking about artsy things, that tells me the kind of direction the photographer is trying to get people to like subliminally see in their work. Or if I see like the hashtag sexy, for instance, then like I kind of, no matter how much the photographer talks about wanting to shoot art nudes, I see the audience that he's like looking towards, or what he's thinking about. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's important for me, or this is what I look at when I'm first looking at someone's portfolio and really taking a deep dive. I almost feel like I can do it in like a minute flat now. But like it really just depends on the portfolio, what I'm looking at. And usually, like, I think the biggest deal is more the conversations that I end up having with photographers during the booking process. So that'll be part two. Hey guys, part two. So part two is about booking your photo shoot. What are models thinking about when you're booking them? So I think this is pretty important, the way the conversation goes. I try to be pretty lax for the fact that like I'm running a kind of a luxury service. It's for artists who are looking for models to build their art with. Some of these are photographers and some of these are other artists, painters, etc. A lot of people are doing this for their own enjoyment and their own fun. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're like not trying really hard, and it doesn't mean that like they're amazing, but it can be a variety of skill levels in between. But a lot of people are trying to do this for some sort of joy in their life. Ooh, I was gonna turn my light on. 1 second. There we go. I think that just makes it a little less grainy. Okay. So what I look for in these conversations is how professional are they and how polite are they? I do think that the best way to get the best results for your photo shoot is to be as blunt and professional in conversation as possible, especially online. Like really focus on what it is that you need, what it is that you're looking for, time, date, place, and don't get too much into informalities and like fun conversation. Like I get why you might want to do that to like figure out the personality of a model and if you guys would work well together. I do myself like have consultation phone calls, and they're free for less than for any sort of call under 10 minutes, just so you can get an idea of who I am, if that's like something you need to make sure that you're going to work well with me. And I get that because you're putting a lot of money and a lot of faith into me and helping with your artistic concept. I want to be there and I really want to be helpful. And this is why too, like I say in message, be as blunt as possible and be as quick to like the details as you need. Because I want to make sure that I understand everything when I go back through the messages or when I'm writing things down and planning for your photo shoot. I don't accidentally get anything mixed up or wrong. I don't want to like accidentally mix up the times, especially if there is a time change. All these things can be like just focused on and very easy, but it's hard to find the details if there's a lot of conversation, especially like conversations about inspiration or like shoot looks or anything like that. I would just say that if you want to have a huge discussion about about shoot concepts or like what you are interested possibly in me bringing, or my opinions on a subject, for instance, to maybe have a phone or text conversation instead, and then just kind of keep the details on Messenger. Keeping things on message is a lot better in general because I can answer at my own speed. So there's a guaranteed time that you're guaranteed to get a response, versus sometimes, especially while I'm on tour, it's going to be really hard for me to have a phone conversation with someone and to keep track of the phone conversation. Like I would never say to discuss details that you want to be remembered in the phone conversation, because it's so easy to hang up and forget what you said or be confused. All of this needs to be written down. And so I only like accept anything that's been written down in order that we can both keep track of it. We can both go back to it and be like, yes, this is what we agreed to. This is what we said. Keeping conversations short really does help that entire process. I look for this kind of professionalism in the convo to see what it's going to be like during the photo shoot. Sometimes a lot of informality, as much fun as it can be, can mean that I might have to like be a little bit more hands-on during the photo shoot and make sure that we stay on time and a little more organized, keep up with you and make sure that you're sticking to your concepts and what you want to get from the photo shoot, without freaking out that you've run out of time when time does come up. I also use it to see, like, are you wishy-washy with details, or are you going to push my boundaries or limits? So being wishy-washy with details ends up getting really tricky. Sometimes that can be a sign that someone's not really that interested in the photo shoot, or they're not going to take it seriously, and so they're not going to commit to it. There's a good chance that these people are going to cancel if they don't tell me an exact time or date. Or once they do tell me an exact time or date, I'm not going to have any availability anymore. So that can really be a big issue for photographers, but it's something I watch out for because it's something that I usually assume means that you don't actually care that much about this shoot, or it's just not as much of a priority right now as maybe other things in your life, one or the other. But it does mean that I can't necessarily dedicate nearly as much time. I also see a lot of wishy-washy with details, so people who will come up with tons of concepts that they want to do, or tons of ideas and way too many concepts, and like they've only booked, like, for instance, a 2-hour photo shoot, and it's just not something that I think that they can completely do. And it either, to me, says that like they're not very good with their time management, or that they really haven't narrowed down what they're interested in. But it can be really hard for me to keep track of what they are interested in when I'm being thrown out a bunch of ideas over time without like a lot of details. Really, just a messenger, stick to the details. And if it, like, it's great to brainstorm, but maybe journal about it a little bit first, and you can come to me, so that way we can keep it very much on task. It's also, I think, really important to kind of keep everything on task in Messenger, so that way all the details are out there. Once we get to the photo shoot, we can actually relax and enjoy ourselves and like have a little bit more fun in time and conversation. I also think conversation is a lot better in person than it is online. I'm not a big fan of talking and messaging and calling people unless I really, really have to. I generally enjoy that, like, in-person, one-on-one kind of time and discussion, especially as we're building and creating something. And then we also don't have to worry about, once we get to the photo shoot, wasting a ton of time on figuring out what we were going to do or what we plan to do. When it's especially probably too late for me to get new wardrobe or like new anything, because I've shown up with whatever it is that I have. Let's see, a huge thing that I really have started looking out for and judging in conversation is how well are my limits like understood and established. Like, and this can be anywhere from, like, is this person going to try to push their time limits? Like, are they not going to want to stay within their time limits? Am I going to need to like keep them on task the entire time? Or are they going to try to push me into like looks that I'm not comfortable with doing, either things that are like maybe outside my own comfort zone, or just outside of things that I'm capable of doing for safety, or just my own physical limits. I totally understand asking. I don't think there's anything wrong with asking. I know some photographers have gotten in trouble with asking people the wrong things. Don't get me wrong, I don't love being asked if I do like looks outside my comfort zone, because I think I make it pretty apparent that I don't. But I also don't judge anyone for asking, just in case I haven't said it or I don't make it super public knowledge. This is often the case with models, so I totally get it and I totally understand. My biggest issue is when people then try to manipulate the situation and prod me into doing something. Cool. So you're getting dry. I have a bigger issue with when people try to push me into trying to do things that I'm not comfortable with, either by offering way more money or trying to manipulate me in any sort of way or direction, to going outside of my comfort zones or outside of the limits that I have placed and put down. And this can be financial as well. Like, for instance, asking or prodding for discounts. These are all things that I think are really important to watch out for, because if someone's willing or starting to do it in Messenger, there's a really good chance they're going to try to do it to you in person. And you want to be ready to say no and be quick on the draw in person as well. definitely think it's not as easy in person as it is in Messenger when you can take a minute and think about it and say no ahead of time. Um, but yeah, sometimes if people do ask a little too much outside my limit, a few too many times, it can be a reason not to work with someone. All right, now on to part three. Now for part three. So, what are models thinking about during the photo shoot? How are they judging you horribly? We really aren't. Most of the time, I think we're more focused on what we're doing and what we need to do than kind of judging you. I guess judging you in a way that we're trying to understand who you are as a photographer and what you might need. So, what is it that we can bring to the table to help you? Being an experienced or inexperienced photographer isn't like that big of a deal. We're here to help everyone as much as we can. And I've gotten some amazing photos from experienced and inexperienced photographers, as well as some horrible photos from both. So I will say experience level is not what it is about. It's about how much like can we work together? How well can we work together? So taking time for your lighting, taking time to like figure out your camera settings, taking time for your angles, none of these things are that big of a deal. Like take the time to get the photo in focus. We as models appreciate it. We totally understand. At least like if it's a professional model who has been doing this, she wants you to take the time to get all of the settings right. That is what's important. That really shows like some care and dedication to what you're doing. And that can honestly kind of feel really special that you then chose us to like help be a part of what's going on and what's working. So I've had a lot of people who get really embarrassed by taking a while to redo their settings, like a few different like setting choices, a few different like not camera angles, I'm sorry, lighting angles and switching out the lights. Like no, makes perfect sense. Totally get it. The other thing every single photographer seems to do is leave the lens cap on their camera, lose their camera, and lose their lens cap. Just happens. It happens to us all, them all, every single person ever, all. Like, I mean, it's just not that big of a deal. I totally get it because I've done some photography now as well, and it feels really awkward and it feels really embarrassing and it feels like it's taking forever to get the settings right, and then you can't find the stupid can you say that word on YouTube? Probably. You can't find the dumb like camera lens that you just put on, or like you've left the camera lens on your camera several times now before you lift it up. Like no, you're protecting your camera. That makes total sense. It's easy to forget. I find that I always seem to be turning off my camera between sets and between shots, and so I forget to turn it back on as I'm like lifting it to my face, and I freak out that I've like lost all the battery in it. But no, I mean, you do you, whatever makes you comfortable, and honestly, like that's not what's important. What's important is about getting the photos and getting the shot, and that's what we really care about, and that's what we really notice and see during the photo shoot is like how much dedication do you really want in this, and how much work are you putting in this to like get the right shot. And you don't have to go overboard. Like you don't have to be moving around a lot to get a good shot. You don't have to change the lights a ton. You don't have to know and have like 6 different light setups. It can be really simple, but it's just like how well do you know what you're working with, and how much do you like it, and how much are you experimenting? And that's what we're noticing and trying to like queue up on, so that way we can help during the shoot. Excuse me. Let's see. I knew there was something really important on here. But yeah, pretty much we're really focused on how well do you also understand your camera and lighting. So we as models have seen a lot of different lighting, and we've worked with a lot of different lens choices before, which means that we can help a lot in that situation, or rather that we know what we're doing when we're going to be posing in these kind of situations. So we like can work with just about a few different for many different parameters. I'm going to adjust my like posing, my wardrobe, etc. based off of the setup and based off of the lens and angle that you're doing, just so I can like be better aware and better informed. And if you're like a newer photographer, I might like try to help a little bit more with guiding. I just try to see like how responsive you are, or like how much you seem to be struggling with this lighting or this setting and getting exactly what you want. And I just want to be here so I can pick up on that and see if there's something I can do as a model to pose a little bit differently for like the limits that we have in the situation. And it can totally be done. If there's something you're looking for the very specific lighting or very specific look, there is a pose for it. We just got to find it. We just got to like work around to getting it. I think some of the things that I have totally judged is like, we can definitely tell if you don't know what you're doing with your lighting, with your camera, and with your lens. If you're taking a weird angle with the kind of lens that you're working with or the kind of lighting that you have, we know if it's not really going to work. Like, you do you. Some of you are just here to have fun more than just making a photo. But we can definitely tell your experience level based on this. And I've worked with quite a few photographers who also get really bad advice on how to get into photography or what's good photography or how to take a good photo. I've heard some crazy things from like, your ISO should never be above 100, or I worked with this one photographer that was really interesting who thought like I should never turn my head to the left because that's too masculine, so it should always just be in like this one direction. These are some like weird guidelines that are sometimes in photography books and people will pick up on them. Some of these things need to be taken with a grain of salt. You use your own common sense and your own knowledge in what you like. You could also say art is anything. So you know what, if like your own sense and style and eye seems to be directing you and pointing you in this direction, great. But if you're having issues, like, I'm totally down to help and troubleshoot and solve what's going on. It's that perception, or not perception, sorry, uh, looking for a specific word, but pretty much it's your ability to collaborate and your ability to work together that I'm really trying to figure out. And I don't need you to accept my opinions or like even want my opinions. That's totally fine. But if you do need them and you do want them, like, I want to be here and available and respected for doing so. During the photo shoot, I can also usually tell very much whether you've ever worked with professional models, or if you have a very specific concept in mind. Most of the time you can kind of just give me an idea of what we're looking for. And as long as I see what our lighting is and I see kind of where your angles with the camera and the lens are, then I can just go ahead and pose myself and figure it out. I do like some guidance, some feedback, knowing like I'm getting too far out of the lighting, because I can't tell exactly what your settings are going to be on your camera. I can only tell kind of what your lens is, and in my head from memory, like knowing some of the experience of the distortion from these lenses. And then I can also use the lighting to kind of determine like what I need to be doing. Some people will pose me a lot, and if they start off like right away with posing me a lot, I can tell that like they probably don't work with models very often. That, or they do have a very specific thought in mind, but usually it's oftentimes that they're more experienced with client photography than model photography. One of the like joys of modeling photography is that you can kind of just tell us what to do and we'll figure it out. You just relax and focus on everything else. Whereas with client photography, you really do have to pose people. And with some people, I mean, they have a very specific idea of what they want, so I'm here to do it, and then I just have to make my smaller minor adjustments as a model for my own framework to try to get what you're looking for. But oftentimes too, I kind of learn what it is that you're looking for on my body, or this isn't always communicated, I feel like, in pre-booking, because sometimes I think it is kind of subconscious. But I notice that photographers or the artists will have other artists that are not photographers will have like something in particular that they particularly like about me, or they particularly like to capture in models in general. Sometimes it's collarbones, sometimes it's cheekbones, sometimes like some photographers will always only ever want to shoot you as long as you're looking straight into the camera, and some never want you looking at the camera. They want you very like kind of doing your own thing in the moment, or like a little bit of a mixture of both. So those are just kinds of things that I pick up of when are you taking the photo and when are you taking the shot and when are you moving around. Certain photographers will either move around too much all the time, especially when I'm choosing and making a pose. I'm specifically doing it for the where your camera and your lens is in relation to the lighting. So I'm not choosing this pose for you to like move around and do something completely different. But if you, of course, like see something different or have an idea that maybe tweaking it a little bit or tweaking your own angle a little bit is going to make it look better, that totally makes sense. That really does. Sorry, I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold. And then, of course, when you move, I will also try to move because I'm trying really hard to do my poses in accordance with your own like angles and lenses. And sometimes I can tell your own experience level just based off of like what angles you're using or what you think you should be doing. For instance, if you're standing above me because you're just taller and you're using a wide angle lens, then this might sound crazy, but usually I'm going to get on the floor. And the reason for this is that if I'm standing, you're going to make my torso look really long and my legs really short. But if I'm sitting or laying, my legs are going to be more directed towards you and they're going to look longer while the rest of my body ends up looking totally in proportion to itself. Which is kind of funny because I've noticed a lot of photographers will then get on the floor because I'm on the floor. But then once they're on the floor, the best angle for me with their wide angle lens is usually while I'm standing, because really what you want is you want the torso slightly farther away from the camera. I would not say that this is a rule. Do not just like take that word of advice and like apply it to everything. But in general, this is like something I've noticed. And ironically, once I stand up, the photographer wants to stand up, even though I'm trying to compensate for like what their angle is and what they're doing. So of course, like it makes sense to like move around a little bit as a photographer, try to get like a slightly better angle or a slightly better thing. If you need me to adjust something like ever so small, I can totally do that. Touching a model, I'm not gonna say it's never ever acceptable, but it's never ever acceptable without talking to them first. Like part of it is like don't freak someone out and surprise someone, but also some of the time I can really just easily pose something myself versus you walking the like 10 extra feet to do it. Like you also don't want to creep someone out when they're trying to get really comfortable with working with you. If you wouldn't touch them in any other workplace, don't touch them here. And that's generally the case for all of this, is don't treat anyone like you wouldn't in another workplace. And then, yeah, okay, the last part is just how consistent were you during the photo shoot as with your messages? Usually, personality wise, like you can kind of guess what someone's going to be like. That's not always true. Um, Whereas what I'm really talking about and what I'm really looking for is like how much did we plan and how much did we stick to that plan during the photo shoot. Oftentimes there's going to be quite a bit of deviation from the original concept. There might be, it's like a rare scenario where I just show up and we do exactly what we talked about and exactly what we had in mind. But just how much did we deviate? How much did you talk about certain aspects or certain ideas and you kind of didn't really end up, I don't want to say following through because that puts such a negative spin on it, but like how much were you really looking for those things? And I file that away in the back of my head to remember for later if we ever shoot again. So I'm more prepared for the next shoot. This can give me about, usually through like talking to you as well as looking at your portfolio, I have a pretty good idea, but always be prepared for surprises. So in conclusion, models aren't judging you unless you're creepy. But models aren't trying to judge you. They're more just trying to figure out how we can best cater towards your work and how can we do our best job in this situation, no matter what your experience level is or like what look you're looking for or the aesthetic. We just want to be here to try to capture the vision. And so we're focusing on all these things in your portfolio and how you're talking and then what's going on during the photo shoot so that way we can better help you and get exactly what you're looking for. Like when in doubt, communication is just always key. Go ahead and say what's on your mind. A lot of people talk to themselves out loud during a photo shoot, and I think that's just in general, like people just talk to themselves out loud when they're thinking, and that's fine. Like think. This is a creative process. This is something that you're engineering and making and figuring out. There's not a lot that you can do bad at a photo shoot other than being a bad person. And that's really like the only time that I would ever say maybe you should think about like who you are and what you're doing and doing something differently. But your own process, your own artistic process is yours. And most models have seen a lot of different artistic processes. You're not going to scare us. We're very eager and happy to help. And that is what it's all about. That is the entire job, is how can we make you a better artist? All right. Well, thank you so much. Feel free to subscribe if you want to. I hope to make more videos. I know this one was a long one and I hope that they won't always be this long. I'm going to try to like figure out if there's ways to like put little breaks in so you can just like skip to whichever part of this video you really wanted to see anyway. But no guarantees on that. That's why I'm just writing it in now, saying it now. But yeah, absolutely leave some comments, share if you like. Comments are really helpful. I'd love to hear any ideas or anything that you've like experienced that you thought was like right, or something that maybe I didn't think about or that I left out. And then maybe I can make another video that's even better than this one in the future. All right, I hope everyone's doing well and I'll talk to you all soon.